News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset, y'all. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Two quick notes. Number one, I ask you to pray for the family of and the friends and the colleagues, which is the entire Fort Worth Police Department, with the death of Sergeant Billy Randolph, killed while working a crash on I-35W, as you heard moments ago from our excellent news team here on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. A drunken driver going up on the ramp the wrong way killed a man who honored this country with 29 years of service as a police officer and 4 years of service in the Air Force. A 33-year legacy serving his people, his country, and most importantly, though, he was a father, a husband, and most importantly, he was a husband and then a father, and a grandfather as well. So that man had every right to retire, but he kept serving, and he was killed for it by a drunken driver going up on that ramp. This is one of the many reasons they blocked the ramp off. This is one of the many reasons why I tell everybody you know, love, even the ones you don't like. Always, if you have to run on your rim, it doesn't matter if you destroy that rim. Do not park on the highway. Do not get off on the side of the highway. I'm quoting Trooper Lonnie Hanschel, who's the DFW trooper spokesperson. You will just basically tell the people you love you'll die, because that regularly happens. And this was a blocked off road, and this woman still is accused of driving up the wrong side and killing a cop. It's just disgusting and angering, to say the least. So that's it for now on that. But right now you're going to see war in the Middle East. We are waiting, but Israel and the United States have officially said that they believe that Israel will be attacked directly by Iran and its proxies. This is going to be worse than the strike in April, where Iran ordered and sent a direct hit from its own self, along with its proxy. They sent 300 missiles and one-way drones, ballistic missiles and other such weaponry. And Israel in the Iron Dome could not stop it by itself. With David Sling, with the Iron Dome, with all of its capabilities, which are very manifold and are great, they still couldn't stop it all. They needed the United States, Britain, and France. We all interdicted many of the missiles. And this one's going to be way worse. And it's going to be direct. And it's going to be direct from Iran. And it's going to be from most likely the Houthis from the south. Also from the north in Lebanon with Hezbollah and Hamas, most likely as well, from the east. So do you understand? From the east with Gaza, which is on the ocean. You're literally looking at a 4-front attack. You understand that? Can you imagine if we were under attack by 4 fronts? Now, it's very dangerous. And to show you the escalation levels we are at now, the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, which is equipped with F-35C jet fighters, has been ordered to move quickly into the Middle East, where it could add to the capabilities of the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group. Do you understand that means they're already in the region? Do you understand what that means? We're going to have 2 carrier strike groups in the region. We also have another, the Lincoln, by the way, is going to be taken out of coverage of China. I mean, that's how big of a deal. We're pulling the freaking carrier strike group out of the South China Sea for if the crap hits the fan with the invasion of Taiwan. And it's going to take 2 weeks to get it here. But they're both going to be, the Lincoln and the Roosevelt are nuclear powered, and they carry dozens of aircrafts if they wish to. The guided missile submarine there's also a guided missile submarine that's been ordered to the region in the Middle East as well. The USS Georgia carries more than 150 Tomahawk missiles. That's where we're at right now. They've also sent in the F-22 Raptors. I believe they're already there. It doesn't take much for them to get there. Thank you, God. That's an incredible piece of machinery that we were able to build. Israel intel says that Iran's attack, according to the Jerusalem Post, will be directly within days. The U.S. has ordered the submarine the USS, as I mentioned, a guided missile submarine to the Middle East, AP says, along with the USS Abraham Lincoln, etc. Monday, the United States said it believes Iran and its proxies are may launch a strike against Israel as soon as this week. Guess what's on Thursday? Peace talks. Guess who it's between? Hamas and Israel, including a ceasefire and hostage deal on the table. They're not going to do that. Is the new leader, because of the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, who used to be the head of Israel, he's dead. He took a dirt nap with his 69 virgins or whatever that is, they allegedly believe. Anyway, so here's the deal. Formal talks Thursday, ceasefire, returning the hostages. It's not going to happen because Yahya Sinwar, the architect of the October 7th terrorist attack on Israel that killed 1,200 Israelis, and by the way, 30 Americans were killed that day too. Joe doesn't want to talk about that much to you, but know that it's cackling Kamala. Israeli defense intelligence say that Iran's is preparing for an imminent large strike. Okay, so this is it. And I believe it'll end up leading to a broader war in the Middle East because Israel's not going to only attack Iran. If they get attacks from these other areas, they're going to severely punish the other ones. They've also made it known that they're going to, here's what the plan is most likely, according to former Israeli Prime Minister, what is his name? It'll come to me in a second, but he was on Fox News, and he said this in an interview last week, that the plan is most likely going to be this. It's not the plan. He just says here's what he thinks it is. He thinks the plan is to kill all the leadership of Iran, take out its electric grid, and take out its refineries. And they might hit the nuclear sites. And they must. And I'll get into that coming up in a little bit. It's what's worse than you think on their nuclear capabilities as of right now. So my questions for you: how likely do you think the Middle East is about to break out into war? And how likely do you think a World War III scenario may unfold? China is now much more likely to maybe attack. Our carrier strike group has left. We're weak. Nobody is running this country right now. Kamala has nothing on her docket today, and she is not in the White House most of the time lately, as we all know. Joe is AWOL. He is literally hiding most of the time. Quote, this is a window of opportunity that will slam shut if Trump is elected. KT McFarland, a former Trump official in the Defense Department, said, we're in a period of maximum vulnerability because Biden has disappeared from view, she says. Harris is campaigning full-time and won't meet with the press. It sends a signal to the world there's no one in charge of the White House. I couldn't agree more. How likely is the Middle East about to break out into war? How likely do you think a World War III scenario could unfold? And I'm not just saying that. And how do you think this will affect the Kamala-Trump race? And how confident are you in Kamala and Joe's leadership in handling a Middle East war? I have no confidence. How about you? 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Chime in right now, 800-288-9227. That's 800-288-WBAP. Line's wide open. Want to hear from you right now. We'll see if we can get you on right away before we have to pause for a moment. Coming up next, by the way, I do want to tell you at 8:15. At 8:15, we're going to be doing much more information on the Iranian nuclear program because they actually can have a bomb, quite possibly have the nuclear fissile material enough to make a nuclear warhead within a few days. And they have really cloistered away and hidden their nuclear program, and they have gone all the way to the wall with putting together a nuclear enrichment and making nuclear fissile material. And so the other thing is, while they may be 6 months. We used to think recently, intelligence experts, we used to be able to think that they have 6 more months before they could actually make a missile that could reach the major areas with a nuclear warhead. But a crude one could be ready within a few weeks, a few months. So this is going to have to end. It's going to have to be knocked out. And I believe Israel will take this time in response to this to take out the nuclear program. And I'm going to explain to you what they're going to do and just how far along Iran is specifically coming up next, and how the last attack that Israel did on Iran was the response to the 300 missiles that I told you about earlier. They attacked Iran attacked Israel with 3 months ago, or 4 or 5 months ago, I should say, in April. That was a demonstration of how accurate they know everything, where everything is, and how accurately they can strike the nuclear facilities. I'll explain that also coming up next at 8:15, 8:16 maybe. News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. News Talk 820 WBAP now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset, y'all. 800-288-WBAP is our number. That's 800-288-9227. Couple questions for you as we send a second carrier strike group, and we have a nuclear sub deployed also. It was originally deployed to watch China. It is now going to the Middle East. We have the F-22 Raptor, I believe it's called, a group of them already ordered over there to the Middle East, as everybody, the Iranians and its allies and its proxies, the United States and Israel's allies, other countries, most likely Britain, France, they are preparing to thwart the pending attack from Iran, excuse me. That could come tonight, tomorrow, the next day, most likely before the supposed peace talks are supposed to take place on Thursday. And when you have the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, assassinated while being a guest at an exclusive retreat compound as a guest of the newly elected president of Iran, assassinated after he went and took part in a ceremony, shook his hand, smiled for pictures, went back into his little apartment, or his nice luxury apartment there in Tehran, and was executed by a bomb that was installed into that room 2 months ago. And the other thing that should scare the crap out of people is, that should scare the Iranians, the crap out of the Iranians, is there are people within the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is their most elite trainers and planners and attackers of U.S., Israel, and other free democratic interests in the Middle East. They are the people that sponsor it, train it, and execute it. So there's traitors in there that are acting as agents for Israel. And that's how they got that bomb in there. So the point is, though, that Menachem Begin, I believe, was the one. No, he's way past being dead. Oh, I know who it is. Naftali Bennett. His name dropped out of my mind when I was talking about it in the last second. Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett was on. Menachem Begin died a long time ago. He died. But a former Prime Minister of Israel was on that Fox News program last week, and he said, here's what I would do, Naftali Bennett. He said, I would kill the leadership of Iran with this next major attack if this happens. He says, it's not just going to do a little bit. This time I think it's going to be, they're going to take out the leadership, they're going to kill them, and they're going to take out the nuclear program, period. They're going to take out the grid. That's probably one of the first things they'll do. So there's no more electricity in Iran. So that and they're going to take out the oil refineries. They're going to cut off their money, their ability to even have power, their ability to ever make a nuclear warhead or weapon ever again for the foreseeable future, for the next, 50, 100 years? I don't know. It's literally, that has to be done. It cannot allow it. It's not an option to let it happen. Even Joe Biden has said he would not let it happen. But here we are now, and he's absent, and there's 4 months left or so of his campaign, of his presidency, so this man's absent. Kamala's not running the country. She's not even in the White House. She's absent. So this is a perfect time. We've left the South China Sea with a sub and with a carrier strike group have left to come to the Middle East. I think we're ripe to get attacked. for Taiwan to get attacked and be taken over. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but this is a really good time to do something like that. Our allies know that they cannot count on us to defend them fully, to attack anybody who would threaten them. And the enemies of America know this is a great time to move, and they're going to move. So what's about to happen is, I think that is going to happen. And Iran's going to strike here in a second now. Today, tomorrow, or Thursday, possibly Friday, but it's going to happen before Friday, according to the U.S. and Israel. So my questions for you are, how likely is the Middle East about to break out into war? How likely do you think a World War III scenario may unfold? Wars are always begun by mistakes. The general quoted that last year. I love quoting it. Wars are begun by mistakes. Someone makes a mistake. They don't want to go to war. Something happens while they're doing some things like what we're seeing here, and something gets triggered. And how do you think this will affect the Kamala Trump race? Some have told me personally they think it's because Kamala and Joe want war because it'll get her back into the office, because nobody wants to shake the boat when there's a war. But see, the problem is Biden's not going to be the president anymore. So you would elect a new person who's never done anything foreign policy, and on anything she's ever said, foreign policy has been a disaster. Ukraine is a country in Europe. It's surrounded by, dangerous new nuclear reality. From the Wall Street Journal editorial board. Here it is. A new report by veteran nuclear inspector David Albright and fellow researcher Sarah Burkhardt from the Institute for Science and International Security. Both are highly regarded as fact-based analysts. For months, people have always thought Iran, it would be months for them to be able to avoid detection at multiple facilities. They would be able to do that for months. It has changed over the last 2 years. Iran can now break out quickly in days with enough enriched uranium to make a nuclear warhead in days, using its deeply burrowed Fordo facility. No one could detect it in time. This makes U.S. officials look like they've been living under a rock, he said today in the Journal. The Journal quoted him today. So here's what I wanted to say about this. When Iran struck last, it struck Iran directly. Last time was Iran attacked them directly in April. They hit right at the Fordo facility, right next to it, with a pinprick strike. And what it was a controlled, meek message. Meek is power under control. It says, we have assets in the ground right there, and we can hit your facility. In fact, we just did. We touched it right next to it. Do you understand? So this shows them we can hit at any moment, and we can kill you. They've done the same thing with killing Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas, who's been replaced by Yahya Sinwar, as I mentioned, which is why ain't going to be no negotiations. Yahya was the architect of October 7th. The point is, they know exactly where everything is, and they know how they're going to kill the leaders, and they're going to take out the nuclear program, and they're going to do all the stuff I described, and that will lead to a war in the Middle East. Stat. All right, 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Coming up at 35 after the hour, Tim Walz, more devastating videos that are going to rock his world and your world, and more on, in fact, PolitiFact, the liberal fact checker, says, in fact, he did lie about Tim Walz, about his combat and his service. Rutro Rastro, all that next. And who's going to be more moderate? Kamala Walz, you think? Ooh, all that next at 35 after the hour. Chris Krok, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. All right, coming up in a little bit here, we're going to get to, I'm going to play it at 45 after the hour. You're going to hear a devastating report from one of the local affiliates. It's WCCO TV in Minneapolis about what Governor Tim Walz did to the police. And it's really, honestly, all I got to do is push play and you're going to be like, oh my gosh. Because they got to testify in the Minnesota Senate on how cops were treated during the St. George Floyd, blessed be his name, the George Fentanyl riots, how the Minneapolis police were treated at that point and after. And I have the interesting quotation from Steve Saylor, one of the columnists. How did Tim Walz do at Black Lives Mattering in his, I think, 8 years of governing? is Minneapolis mayor, or excuse me, as Minnesota's mayor. But first, we got some folks who wanted to call on this. I'm grateful for their call. I always want to hear your thoughts on this. Are we headed to World War III here? How likely do you feel the Middle East is about to break out into war? Israel and the United States reportedly saying that within the next 3-4 days, we're going to have a major attack on Israel from Iran and its proxies, and thereupon Israel will strike back worse than it ever has against Iran. The former Prime Minister of Israel saying that, in fact, he believes it'll be a complete massive strike that'll take out the leadership, its electric grid, its refineries, and nuclear capabilities, which need to be done. So the questions on this are, how likely do you feel the Middle East is about to break out into war? And I think it's going to happen because the attack may come from 4 fronts directed by Iran. How likely do you think a World War III scenario may unfold? I think it's actually pretty likely, only because I hate to even say that, but because China has been abandoned, we've left some of our war submarines and war aircraft carriers to take out of there to defend the Middle East. And this is it. Joe is AWOL now in the White House, and Kamala is AWOL too. How do you think this is going to affect the Kamala Trump race? I don't think it's going to help, but one of my buddies told me he thinks it's going to help for them to stay in office, and they want this. I don't think so. She's not in the office, and everybody knows she ain't got nothing compared to Trump on foreign policy, and I'm not just saying that as a biased opinion. How confident are you in Kamala and Joe's leadership in handling a Middle East war? To that, I would say look at Afghanistan and Ukraine. Everybody does whatever they want to do, and he keeps saying don't, and every time they do. Now, your call at 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Let's go first to Gordon in Commerce. Gordon, WBAP, hello.
Good evening. How are you?
Good evening.
Well, there may be a mini war in the Middle East, and Israel's got the resources to take out Iran, but there's not going to be a third world war based on this. I mean, Russia can't even take over Ukraine, and their military has been humiliated.
Yes, let me buttress that. I just read today over the weekend about they are now giving bonuses to get people to sign up because they're not able to conscript and draft more people. So they're like paying them, and nobody wants it, even with big fat paycheck bonuses, to sign up now. So you're right about that. Go ahead.
They've been doing that for a while, and they're doing it in other countries too. And China, it's very difficult to invade an island, as the Germans found out in World War II. But even if China takes over Taiwan, which it might be able to do, we could just immediately cut off all imports from China, send tens of millions of Chinese into the unemployment lines, and maybe even they might try and overthrow their government, because at some stage they're going to do that. You know, dictatorships do not last forever.
Well, the problem is if they do go in there, couple of things are going to happen. We very well will win it. It's been war gamed out, as you would imagine, by a lot of people. And what the Journal has talked about and the Institute for the Study of War has done, and they're gaming it out, is said that we would win, but the losses would be catastrophic. We would lose what we lost in the war on terror in 22 years of it, or 24 years of it. We would lose that in a week. Thousands and thousands of men would be lost, and women, and we would run out of long-range missiles within a week. We would literally have no more long-range missiles for our ships.
That is a problem generally in America.
Yeah.
We have downsized the defense industry so much that, yes, we only have a week's supply of some weapons or 3 months' supply. So we need to build up our stockpile.
Thank goodness we keep giving more to Ukraine. They need it more than we do. Who the hell are we? What do we need, right? But here's the difference. I think China would have a lot of leverage with chips. The world supply of chips would now be controlled by China. And what that means, as you know, is no more weapons, and no more defense Most things in defense, as you know, and everybody knows, are extremely advanced now. That requires chips. No more defense. No more ability to create all these things that we need to defend ourselves or be offense in these issues. No more cars, like the chip shortage with the cars. Remember that? All these options couldn't even be on there because there weren't any chips left. And then also computers, cell phones, everything would be, you know.
But there's a lot of chip factories about to come online in the U.S.
No, they're not, unfortunately, because of Joe Biden and Kamala having their leftist stuff. At least the ones that have been planted as seeds in this administration the past 4 years are beset by insane leftist green regulations, insane leftist policy regulations saying you have to hire all these types of people like minority and poor and fatherless, and you got to put these people. And their chip factories are sometimes in areas where none of that exists. And union child care operations must be put there. Like all these things that are so onerous that they're either pulling out and leaving it, like Samsung, I think, pulled out or delayed stuff for years recently. Go ahead. I'm one in Arizona. Go ahead.
Well, China's not going to have the chips either, because if China invades Taiwan, that factory will be blown up within 5 minutes. So China doesn't get control of it.
I don't know, because if we win, which we're reportedly going to win, but it's going to take a bloody week, and we'd lose all the weapons and tens of thousands of people in a week, and that America would freak out. Anyways, go ahead.
But that factory would be about number one on the hit list.
I don't know. If we're going to win, why would we blow it up and then we have no supply?
Yeah, nor do the Chinese.
Well, but yes, they do. I believe they have their own chip factories they have in their own country.
Not the really advanced stuff.
Anyways, okay, let's move on. Go ahead, though. You had more to say.
Yeah, but I just don't think there's going to be a third world war.
Well, wars are begun by mistake, not because anybody wants one.
True.
And so that's something that you can't calculate.
But I don't think even the Russians are stupid enough to use nuclear weapons, because they know what the result would be. We'd all be dead.
Well, we've never seen Russia, China, and Iran in lockstep to this extent ever. And who knows? Gordon, thanks for your call. Always a good one from you. I appreciate you. Can we pop on Robert Mesquite real fast? Okay, Robert Mesquite, you're next. Robert Mesquite, you are next, my man. Do not go anywhere. He was in the Navy, and he definitely wants to talk about this threat of possible war. First, certainly in the Middle East, a wider war, I think, is going to happen. Because when Israel gets attacked by these other countries or terrorist entities run by Iran, but out of other countries, in Lebanon, Iraq, actually the Iraqi and Syria outlets may attack too, that are proxies for IRCG, and IRCG has people there. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps has people there too, so they're going to likely attack, is what we're hearing, whether it be on our bases or other areas. So this is going to be a major pronged attack, and Israel will hit back extremely hard, insanely hard on anyone who hits it. They've made that clear. But that's where we're headed, and I think that's the Middle East war that breaks out wider. And I think that also may be a time to be advantageous to do things like take Taiwan for China, or for Russia to do more things that normally wouldn't do in Ukraine. And I'll give you a little bit more on Ukraine, because Ukraine made some stunning moves recently in the past 2-3 days that have been very good for them. That shows Russia is in a problem situation. All that next at 46 after the hour. This is Chris Krok on News Talk 820 WBAP, and now on FM at 93.3. All right, in a moment, I will be playing this Tim Walz devastating report from local TV station news outlet WCCO in Minneapolis, St. Paul, which if anybody's ever lived there, that's the big giant there. A story they did from a lady who I'm very familiar with, Esme Murphy. I used to talk about her reports when I was on the air there in Minneapolis, St. Paul in the early 2000s. And she's, of course, at no. Esme Murphy is not at CNN. Her colleague Randy Kay used to report with her. She's now on CNN. Anyway, We're also talking about the likelihood of Middle East breaking out into war here, and how you think this will affect the Kamala Trump race. I think it will actually help Trump if it does go to war, because people ain't going to want to go with Kamala for a Middle East war breakout or a world war breakout. And how confident are you in Kamala and Joe's leadership in the Middle East war? Do you think it also could break out into a World War III? China maybe invading Taiwan, Russia maybe going further with Ukraine or others. And by the way, Russia is now putting major bonuses in for people to sign up because they are almost done with their complete drafting of everybody and their brother in the whole country. And nobody's taking up these major bonuses anymore. It tells you everything. Also, Ukraine just did some attacks on Russia inside of Russia, and they withdrew troops. Russia did from certain Ukrainian areas. They left to go back in and defend their homeland. That is something that has never happened before, and Ukraine is about to get the F-16 in motion physically, like actually fly it. Look, I hope they win, Ukraine, but I don't want to give them any more weapons, and I don't want to give them any more money. I've been done for a long time, and you know that. And I don't trust Volodymyr Zelensky. He is a thug who is corrupt. And this is a disgrace and a joke to begin with. But I always hope they win, you know. Robert in Mesquite, you have called in, and I want to hear from you as well. 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Robert, you're on WBAP.
Hey, Chris. Great show, man. I always enjoy your perspective on anything we talk about. Chris?
Yes, I said thank you.
Yeah, I think we have 13 carriers, and China might have 2 or 3. I might be wrong, but I was in the Navy.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I was just wondering what your perspective was on why they decided to withdraw the one from the South China Sea compared to all the ones that we supposedly have. And also, I think Egypt and Syria would probably be a little on our side. They figured that Iran is a danger to them too as well, don't you think?
No, because actually Syria is protected and encouraged. Bashar al-Assad, who's like a Saddam Hussein there, Bashar al-Assad is an ally of Iran and an ally of Russia's, and Russia and Iran have worked together. I read an in-depth piece in the Wall Street Journal today about how Iran is a major supplier to Russia of drones, and Russia is a major supplier of missiles to Iran, and how the war in Ukraine is putting a stress on Russia's availability of missiles and munitions, and how the war and the impending attacks on Israel and from them and Israel on them are also causing friction because Iran cannot share as much as Russia wants to at this point, and Russia can't share as much with Iran at this point. And also, they both support Bashar al-Assad. They back his administration. That is why you've seen Russian troops inside of Syria, and you absolutely have cooperation between Iran and the IRCG and Syria. And there are some IRCG outfits there are some IRCG outfits there in Syria that may hit us from Syria even, I read recently.
You think Egypt and Jordan would side with Israel?
Jordan already has, and they do it somewhat discreetly because they have that radical Islamist element in their country, but King Abdullah is a dear friend to the United States of America. And to friends of mine on this show who come on regular, like author, New York Times author, best-selling author Joel C. Rosenberg. In fact, one of his books does war. Actually, he has a book where he. It's about the assassination of the president or the King Abdullah, actually himself. It's fiction, it's historical fiction or whatever, military fiction. And one of his men read it, and he was so mesmerized and captivated by it, he invited Rosenberg with him, and then they did war games. Him and Rosenberg were up in a chopper, and he was showing him what he was doing, and he got his advice. So they're friends.
Well, I believe you're right about that. I just don't think that we're headed to a third world war, though, because I just don't believe Iran has as good intelligence as the Israelis do.
No, they don't, but here's the problem. Wars are begun by mistakes. They're never begun by choice. And so if somebody does something, one little thing wrong in the Middle East or with Russia, Ukraine, or that one of them does something in reaction to this major attack breaking out, it's going to this week between Israel and Iran and its allies and our allies, if Israel's allies. And if something goes on there, or if Russia makes a move on something, because we're very weak right now as a country. We don't have a president. We don't, and you know that. And so we're extremely vulnerable in the next 5 months. This is the time to strike or to take over something. It's already...
I appreciate your insight, Chris.
Thank you.
I enjoy listening to you.
Thank you. Thank you for your service, my man. Okay. Tim Walz, a devastating report. How much time we got, Broham? Okay, I'll play some of it right now. We're going to pause it in a sec, but here's some of this. It's from WCCO TV Minneapolis after the Black Lives Matter George Fentanyl riots. Here we go.
That's not what we stand for.
Her voice shaking, Minneapolis Police Sergeant Anna Hedberg says during the riots, officers were abandoned by state, city, and department leaders.
To watch them go through that was so heartbreaking. To know that they could have died because we were not allowed to respond the way that we have been trained to respond.
During the riots, the officers were told they could not wear protective frog suits, but were still hit and injured with bottles, cement, and more. Sergeant Hedberg blames state, city, and department leaders for the abandonment of the 3rd Precinct.
I heard the governor say, "Give it up." It wasn't directly to me, it was through a phone call. No, the governor says give up the precinct. I mean, that's...
Let me pause it. We're gonna rewind it a little bit and replay this whole thing. Listen to this. You hear that? Governor Tim Walz said, give it up. Let the 3rd Precinct burn to the ground. Let them take it over. Let the terrorists and the Marxists burn down the 3rd Precinct and take it over. That's Tim Walz. He said that. There's your vice president, huh? You excited about that, maybe? Also, PolitiFact literally blew him up today and said he never served in war and he was lying. It's basically, they said it was completely false. Green Day, the Saviors Tour, comes to Globe Life Field September 11th with special guests the Smashing Pumpkins, Rancid, and the Linda Lindas. Get tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. Text GREEN to 1-800-288-9227 for your chance to win a pair of tickets. That's GREEN to 800-288-9227. So what I'm going to do is tell you how Tim Walz did at Black Lives Mattering. And it's bad stats for African Americans in the wake of George Fentanyl riots. Also, you can hear the rest of that report that is damning for Tim Walz as well, and so much more on this. We're going to talk about this. We're also going to talk about how confident Kamala and Walz will be at being moderate, as they're saying they will be. Oh, boy. All that coming up at 03 after the hour. Next on the Chris Krok Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.